At the Aviation, Communication and Allied Workers Union, despite the pandemic, Caribbean Airlines has opted to maintain the lease of MAX 8 airplanes, while 1,500 workers have been laid off for almost 9 months without pay, and others are asked to take salary cuts. Whilst the union's suggestion for rotation in Trinidad was rejected, Caribbean Airlines Jamaica staff are currently on rotation.
Good day, Trinidad and Tobago. On June 19th, Labor Day, the president of JTUM would have delivered a very powerful Labor Day feature address. And in that feature address, he would have dealt with a number of wide-ranging issues. And one of those issues would have been issues facing the workers at Caribbean Airlines. And in his feature address, he would have expressed concerns about the fact that Caribbean Airlines would rather lease or continue to maintain the lease of some 8 airplanes, whilst at the same time laying off some 1,500 workers for about 9 months without pay. And then they were trying to get some of those workers to accept a pay cut. On top of that, the trade union, the Aviation, Communication and Allied Workers Union, would have made at least a suggestion to Caribbean Airlines to rotate their staff. And interestingly, whilst they would have rotated the staff in Jamaica, they refused to rotate the staff here in Trinidad and Tobago. Lo and behold, just a few days after that feature address, where Comrade Roger, president of JTUM, would have raised this issue, you see on the daily newspapers, headline in the daily newspapers, CAL plans to send home some 450 workers. So now this is not just laying off without pay, they are actually going to sever the employment relationship of some 450 workers. Well, today we have the president of the Aviation, Communication and Allied Workers Union, Comrade Peter Farmer, to elaborate a little bit more on the issues facing workers at Caribbean Airlines. So, Comrade Farmer, what is really going on at Caribbean Airlines?
Good afternoon, and thanks for having me. One of the things that I must say is that what we are experiencing here has to do less with the fact that the company is losing money as opposed to, let us say, getting rid of the union. The company is a state-run company, a state-owned company. It forms part of their the national plan, the whole economic setup. When you look, for instance, at what the government makes from revenue by way of visitor visits, on what they spend, talking about losing $71 million is a drop in the bucket compared to what is being made in terms of expenditure by what is gained from having the company, running of the company. When CAL started as a result of negotiations at BWIA. In 2006, during the negotiations, the company broke down the negotiations, knowing full well that a company called CAL was already formed. When the negotiation broke down, the next thing that was announced is that they were closing down BWIA and they were beginning CAL. They never brought any bill to Parliament for vesting as they did with BWIA. However, they used the same identifier, BW. They used the same numbers. They used the same licenses and so on to continue to operate. The company was taken to court by CATU, and the industrial court actually ruled that CAL is a successor company. CAL has refused to accept that. They went to the court and they've appealed that decision, and they continue to operate without any sort of negotiations. They do what they want, they do as they wish. In 2010, when they absorbed Air Jamaica, the Jamaican government made sure to have the union represent their workers, 10% was 17% of the shares of the company was given to Air Jamaica in exchange. And what CAL was supposed to do, they were supposed to operate the routes, and that Air Jamaica operated with the promise that it will bring in revenue of $100 million. In fact, instead, the company lost $100 million. They had to retreat from that. And ever since, CAL has been supported 1,000 workers from Air Jamaica, including flight attendants and engineering and ground staff, and operating on that basis. The Jamaican government, as I said, ensured that BITWU continued to operate as a recognized majority union. The company has refused to date to recognize the local union. Now, one wonders why that is, and what happens to be the objective of doing that. When we look, for instance, at leases, and is it that they will have freedom, for instance, to do certain things? They were leasing during the period, as the President General said, they were leasing aircraft and so on, while sending people home without pay, and asking them for reductions in salaries, right? When we look at the leases, it's about 8 aircraft were supposed to be leased, the max 8 aircraft, 8 of them. When we look at it, if you use the formula that is Ben Primus, who used to be an agent for procuring aircraft with BWI, half of 1%. So if we even take that in terms of the leases, somebody stands to gain almost 1.5 million US dollars. Why don't they want the union around? Last year, at one point, one of the hotels in New York where the staff stayed, they were renovating it. They refused to move the staff, even though the staff complained, and there were constant petitions to them, please move them, because they had to operate, compromising the safety of because of the fact that the crew could not rest properly. The company remained there. Why was it? Is it a point for something? One has to ask, is it some sort of arrangement they have there? So that these are some of the questions. Why is it they want to get rid of the union? Why? And continue to do that. When you look at, for instance, customer loyalty in terms of always attacking the staff of the union and the upheaval at the union, etc. People probably go to other airlines to book, and they know the customer base that was built up over the years are being lost to these other airlines. The other thing that happens is that, for instance, the workers are used as cost centers. During the pandemic, one of the things they told the workers, they must use their leave. Even though they sent out a circular saying that their leave and so on will not be affected, they came subsequently and told them they must use their leave. So that what happened in effect is that the workers were laid off, and they paid for that. The workers paid for that with their leave, with the vacation leave money. They have the workers there now, going on for almost 9 months on unpaid layoff, right? Now they want to lay off workers. What is going to happen? The salaries that they've failed to pay the workers happens to be the same money they will use to pay redundancy or severance pay to the workers. So the workers would actually be paying to retrench themselves. That's the sort of
See,
thing that the company is doing, and then they see that they make money. But meanwhile, when they come back and they look at the performance and so on, and they have a performance bonus, you will find that people like the chief executive officer goes home with $500,000, as he did in 2019, I think it was, that he was paid for, the $20 million.
yeah.
The
Farmer,
the fact is that they are getting away. The company is getting away with murder, and all because they say that they try to play RRCB, and they want to say that the union is not the recognized majority union, and they refuse to negotiate with them. One of the things that they do, they come, for instance, when we were negotiating the rotation, they said, okay, we will discuss it, because people's lives, the families and so on happen to be involved. But they go behind the union's back and they negotiate and say that the workers, they must agree to the rotation because there is no recognized majority union. Now you tell me, who in a job will decide that they will give up the job voluntarily and the income voluntarily? There's no leadership. There's absolutely no leadership at the company. And these are things that we have to look at. And the people are only looking after themselves. The managers and the people there. In terms of the salary reduction, they have stopped at $40,000, which means that people who are making anything like $200,000 per month, and I'm sure that there are people inside there working for $200,000 a month, pay as though they're working for $40,000, as though they're working for $40,000, and the other staff have to make the sacrifices. There is nothing fair. There is nothing. In terms of one of the things that they did, they instituted something called voluntary early retirement program, where people will get 25% of their annual income. Well, I want to say this in terms of, let us say, a flight attendant. A flight attendant, if they were to use that, what happens? They lose anything like $30,000, as opposed to, let us say, if even they were to go with retrenchment, the retrenchment act, under the retrenchment act. And so these are some of the problems that we face, and I think it's about time. It's about time that we take a stand in terms of letting them know the hour of the day, the time it is, and that they cannot continue to abuse workers in that kind of manner. And we will be coming forward with proposals in terms of with specific proposals, particularly through the joint trade union movement, so that the workers will get their just due in due course.
Thank you very much, Comrade Farmer. It's quite clear that there are quite a lot of issues. And one of the things that really struck me is the unfair and unequal treatment of workers at Caribbean Airlines. And I think it is a grave injustice that is being done at Caribbean Airlines. And you have articulated quite clearly how that injustice is impacting on workers. So I want to thank you for your time and for elaborating for Trinidad and Tobago, so that at least the citizens can have a better sense as to what is going on at Caribbean Airlines. Citizens can have a better sense of the kind of unjust and unfair and unequal treatment that has been meted out to those workers. And you made a very important point, which is that the customer loyalty towards Caribbean Airlines was the result of the workers themselves. And I think that that should not be lost at all. So as we close off, is there anything that you would like to share with Trinidad and Tobago?
Well, first of all, Trinidad and Tobago, thanks for listening to me, and thanks for having the opportunity to speak to you. The airline itself, as you know, happens to be a national entity and a national pride, and the government has to make up its mind whether, in fact, they want to support it it has to be part of their economic strategy, whether they want to support it, whether they would look at the invisible income that it generates and not just the money from the passenger or the cargo, the cargo earnings, because people do come, they do spend a lot of money in there. And in terms even of the connectivity between the Caribbean islands and so on, the airline does that and serves as a link between the metropolitan areas and also the Caribbean itself, so that the airline must, there is justification for it surviving, and there is need. And when they speak about readjusting and restructuring, we would like to know exactly who is dictating the manner in which, because if we say we want to pay for it, if we want to pay for it out of some of the earnings that we have, who it is to say that we ought not to pay for it in that particular manner, or take some of that manner to have the airline survive, because this is our survival and this is our country.
Thank you very much. And another thing that struck me with what you said is that CAL owed workers money from the layoff. They're taking the money that they owe the workers for the layoff in first instance, and using the money that they already owe the workers to pay off the workers for the retrenchment. I mean,
but that is what would happen. That's what happened when they have leases to pay. They're paying the leaseman all his money, you know. The leaseman wants to know nothing about COVID. He wants to know nothing about you don't have money. He's coming for all his money. Why it is you making the workers suffer and you don't want to give them the money?
Yeah.
You know, you want to take the money and give to the leaseman or whoever they're leasing the aircraft from. You know,
whoever interest that they really represented, and it's not the interest of Trinidad and Tobago.
Not the interest there, not the interest there. So that the workers, the first thing that they have to do is pay the workers their full salary for the period that they were laid off. And then after that, we can talk about retrenchment, because they probably knew full well that this is what they were going to do. You see, if you look back, even at I think it's that the House Committee, the interview with them, you know, they were boasting about them bringing in some of the brightest people and whatnot. That I think that was the CEO at some point. Some of the brightest people to steal people's money. That's what, and they think that they've got, you know, that they've got it all down pat, and well, they have the acquiescence of the government and they can do as they wish. But one of the things, and I always remember this. I was a pretty young man when we became independent, and I remember the first address to the nation by the then Prime Minister Eric Williams. He said that our first duty was to protect our democracy. That was the first duty. And in this instance here, and all these things, one of the things that we have to do is to protect our democracy. We cannot allow any sort of arbitrary decisions, the government to take any arbitrary decisions in terms of deciding who they will give the particular largest to that they have in their possession in terms of jobs and favors, whatever it is, and concessions. You know, it must not be arbitrary. It must be well thought out, and there ought to be some good rationale behind what they do. And as far as I see, this has absolutely no good rationale. As I pointed out, in terms of the expenditure, the visitor expenditure, when you look at what they get from tourism, people coming to spend money, the invisible income that in part that CAL brings in, you know, it's in the billions of dollars. So a $700 million subsidy to them or support is nothing compared to the amount of money that will be made. And why now at this point they want to do it? It's only to get rid of the unions, because they recognize that they can't get out of the bind that they are. It was a bad decision. It was a wrong decision to get rid of BWIA and try to get rid of the unions. And the union is not going anywhere. The union is there to stay.
I think that's a great way and a powerful way to end this interview, because that is exactly what they're trying to do. And I recall the words of the first Prime Minister of the country that you iterated this today, that our duty is to protect the democracy. And the truth is, trade unions have been protecting this democracy for a long time. And the more that they can try to get rid of unions, is the more we can slip slower and slower into a dictatorship. So I'd like to thank you, Comrade Peter Farmer, for being with us and for sharing with us these issues as it relates to Caribbean Airlines. Thank you.
Thank you very much and have a good day. Rest of the day. Thanks a lot.
Take care.